seconds. 15 seconds. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
In your face, all over the place.
We're online 24/7. 24/7.
You're listening to the hottest internet station.
From beautiful Saline in southeastern Michigan.
Around the world at sunskyMysteries.com.
This is the 2009 Top 10 Webcam in the World winner. This is SETV.
This message is transmitted at the request of the United States Office of Civil Defense. At 3:40 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, NORAD detected a long-range nuclear missile launched in North Korea. This missile is believed to be headed in the direction of the Los Angeles metropolitan area. It is believed that it will impact this area within the next 1.5 to 2 hours. All residents within a 400-mile radius of this area should seek a fallout shelter immediately.
Must be done. Wake up, America. Be hopeful and be strong.
The only real effect I can have is to create the impression that things aren't as bad as they are. To give our people time, the opportunity to survive.
I guess I just never realized I'd gone so far. We've lost so much control.
Totalitarianism doesn't need armies. It only needs to control a couple of things. The media and the ability to dispense privilege to some and withhold it from others. Of course, a weak and divided people helps.
Liberty is calling. The time has come.
There is only one holistic system of systems. One vast and immense, interwoven, interacting, multivariate, multinational dominion of dollars. Petrodollars, electrodollars, multi-dollars, Reichmarks, rims, rubles, pounds, and shekels. It is the international system of currency which determines the totality of life on this planet.
Wake up, America. The change, it has begun. Let freedom ring. Let freedom ring in your heart.
Well, good evening, everybody. Bill Zam here. I trust that everybody is doing okay today. Let me make a quick adjustment to my headphones, because when you're on the air, your voice is just a little bit behind what you're speaking. So it's kind of an echo in your ears, so you have to have that volume adjusted just right. That's especially tricky when you have a guest on. It's a little inside broadcasting bit of really cool information, I think. Now tonight we're going to talk about a couple of different things. We are going to start out with the new European proposed internet regulations. At the Telegraph over there in the UK, they have an article that is an interview with Mr. Vint Cerf. Mr. Cerf, C-E-R-F, is credited for coming up with the big idea of inventing the internet in the first place. He's credited with being the inventor of the Internet. The father of the Internet. The regulations that they're thinking about in the European Union is one of the things that they are attempting to come up with is the quote-unquote right to be forgotten. Mr. Cerf, often called the father of the Internet, said that the so-called right to be forgotten online was not possible to achieve. You can't go out and remove content from everybody's computer just because you want the world to forget about something. I don't think it's a practical proposition at all. Now, to understand what he's talking about there, your computer keeps a cache of web pages. Now, if you erase that cache, then theoretically every new web page that you go to is brand new. I think what he's talking about, he is exactly correct. It's impossible for you to be able to be forgotten on the Internet if you delete your accounts everywhere. Somewhere there's always going to be some bit of information about you, more than likely in the Google servers. European regulators have yet to clarify precisely what their right to be forgotten would mean, but European Commissioner Viviane Reding has said what she expects it to give web users new controls over information such as posts or pictures and social networks that appear about them online. Well, you can already erase those. So I'm not exactly sure what this new internet regulation would be. It raises the prospect of Facebook or Google, where Mr. Cerf now works, being forced to ensure images or posts that an individual objects to are no longer accessible on the web. Now, it seems to me, rather than having something this cumbersome, what they should have done in the first place was have something like the Tor network or the Onion network, where the information is propagated from computer to computer. And if you erase it, it's erased. Britain's Deputy Information Commissioner, David Smith, recently told a seminar for lawyers that he had difficulty in working out what the new rights are, saying the right to be forgotten contained an element of political gesturing. Mr. Cerf warns, it's very, very hard to get the internet to forget things that you don't want it to remember because it's easy to download and copy and re-upload files again later. There are many different add-ons and plugins that you can get for browsers. I use one myself. It allows me to download videos from places like YouTube or Vimeo or just about any place else where there's a video for reference later on. You can save articles. One of the ways that we do the articles here, and I'm sure that you've seen this before, is we print them out from our computer, and the articles look like this when I print them out. So I have a hard copy. I also save a copy on one of the hard drives. This particular article is from oilprice.net. This is an article about the WTI edging up on the Brent crude oil. And this is over there at oilprice.net, and it's by the guy that runs it, Steve Austin. So if he were to erase this, there are copies floating around on the internet. All you have to do is copy, paste, or you can save the web page as HTML. So it doesn't really make any sense. They're right to be forgotten. So I believe that Mr. Cerf is exactly correct. Now, another little tidbit of information that I've come across, and let's go over here to the screen here. This one I found would be kind of humorous, just from a personal standpoint. The former head of DARPA, that's the military research, Ms. Dugan, has appeared at the TED conference, TED conference, and she did a video that's called Mach 20 Gliders to Hummingbird Drones. And there she is. I had a funny comment about her, but I'm not going to mention it. I'll just leave that to your imagination. In other news, a 1 century old GE light bulb, General Electric light bulb, made by Thomas Edison, actually still works. 100 years ago, March 25th, 1912, to be exact. This is from Yahoo News. Executives and employees gathered at GE's lighting newly formed Nela Park campus to bury a sealed time capsule packed with a daily newspaper, pamphlets, pins, photos, and some GE light bulbs representing available and emerging incandescent technologies of the era. Hundreds of GE lighting employees and retirees gathered yesterday at the base of building number 307 for a real-time, once-in-a-lifetime history lesson. The time capsule was unearthed and its contents were carefully and lovingly removed and put on display before being moved to a secure temperature and light-controlled space across the Nela Park campus near GE's current multi-million-dollar LED reliability testing labs and cleanroom. There was a 100-year-old light bulb in that time capsule. Let me see if I can zoom in on it here so you can see it. And in fact, there it is right there on the screen. That is the 100-year-old GE light bulb. What they did is they had a special socket built just for this this purpose, and they gradually increased the electricity to it because back in 1912 the electrical grid was a different voltage than it is now, and the light bulb worked. It's a 40-watt tungsten incandescent bulb. Very interesting that this 100-year-old light bulb actually works. What I wanted to talk about tonight, our main subject tonight, for those of you that are watching live on the World Wide Web at Celine Entertainment Television, those of you that are listening to the audio stream over here on sunskymysteries.com, we have a treatise that we're going to be talking about over the next few shows. Now, we don't have an interview scheduled for next week because it is the week that I am going on vacation. We are taking our remote broadcasting equipment out into the field, and on the 6th, 7th, 8th, and probably the 9th of April, we are going to be broadcasting from At the Shack. So we don't have a guest scheduled for next Tuesday because I have to get ready for that. But what I want to do is I want to do something not political in nature, but social in nature. I am going to go over a list that was come up by a fellow by the name of Cleon Skousen, S-K-O-U-S-E-N. It is called The Naked Communist. It's a book that he wrote. Now, back in 1963, there was somebody, I believe it was in the state, at the state level, a representative in the state of Florida, who was so, I'm not going to say taken by this, but he was so, thought this was so important. He read it from the floor of their house in Florida, so it will be read into the record permanently. And it is, let me see here, let me bring it up on the screen so that you, the viewers on the video side, can see it. This is, in fact, two things that we have here. We have, on the left-hand side of the screen, we have from the Naked Communist, the current communist goals for the United States. There are 45 of them. I'm going to go over them over the next few shows. And on the right side of the screen is a comparison of the original 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. And I'm going to start with those first, because those seem like they might be the most important. And then we'll start going over the ones on the left-hand side of the screen. Now, both of these came from a website on the internet. It looks like it was a pretty old site, so it may have just been archived, and I didn't get the name of the website. I apologize for that. Let's go back to the screen here and look over here on the right-hand side. The American public, this is this side over here that I'm highlighting. The American public has believed the lies that their quote-unquote leaders, who applaud the fall of communism while they have sold out the country to anti-Christian, anti-American salutes and regulations on federal, state, and local levels. Here is a comparison of the original 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, written by Karl Marx in 1848, along with the American adopted counterpart of each of the planks. The American people have truly been buried in communism by their own politicians of both Republican and Democratic parties. One other, pardon me just for a second while I make sure that everything is okay. One other thing to remember, and I think this is probably the most important part of this. Remember, Karl Marx was stating in the Communist Manifesto that these planks will test whether a country has become communist or not. Right there, you can see it on the screen. Number 1, abolition of private property and the application of all rent to public purpose. The 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution 1868 and various zoning, school, and property taxes, also the Bureau of Land Management. A heavy, progressive, or graduated income tax. These are the first 2 planks of the Communist Manifesto. Misapplication of the 16th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution 1913, the Social Security Act of 1936, Joint House Resolution of 192 of 1933, and various state income taxes. We call it paying our fair share. Marx called it a heavy, progressive, or graduated income tax. The abolition of all rights of inheritance. We call it the federal and state estate tax of 1916, or reformed probate laws and limited inheritance via arbitrary inheritance tax statutes. So that's 3 of them that we already have here in the United States. Confiscation of the property of all immigrants and rebels. We call it government seizures, tax liens, and public law 99-570 of 1986. Executive Order 11,490, Sections 1205, 2002, which gives private land to the Department of Urban Development. The imprisonment of terrorists and those who speak out or write against the government, 1997 Crime/Terrorist Bill, or the IRS confiscation of property without due process. So that's 4 of the planks of the Communist Manifesto that the United States has achieved. Number 5, centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. We call it the Federal Reserve, which is a credit-debit system nationally organized by the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. All local banks are members of the Fed system and are regulated by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. We also call it Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who own about 98% of all of the various mortgages in the United States. Plank number 6, centralization of the means of communication and transportation in the hands of the state. We call it the Federal Communications Commission and the Department of Transportation, mandated through the ICC Act of 1887, the Commissions Act of 1934, the Interstate Commerce Commission established in 1938, the Federal Aviation Administration, the Federal Communications Commission, and Executive Orders 11,490, 10,999, as well as state-mandated driver's licenses and Department of Transportation regulations. Plank number 7. Extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state to bringing into the cultivation of wastelands and the improvement of the soil generally in accordance with a common plan. We call it corporate capacity, the Desert Entry Act, and the Department of Agriculture, as well as the Department of Commerce and Labor, Department of the Interior, the Environmental Protection Agency, Bureau of Land Management, Bureau of Reclamation, Bureau of Mines, National Park Service, and the IRS control of business through corporate regulations. So that's 7 planks of the Communist Manifesto that the United States has achieved. Let's take a look at number 8. Equal liability of all labor. Establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. We call it the Social Security Administration and the Department of Labor. The national debt and inflation has caused the need for a 2-income family. Women in the workplace since the 1920s, the 19th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, asserted socialist unions, affirmative action, the Federal Bureau of Public Works program, and, of course, Executive Order 11,000. Combination of agriculture with manufacturing industry's gradual abolition of the distinction between town and country by a more equitable distribution of the population over the country. We call it the Planning Reorganization Act of 1949, Zoning, Title 17, 1910 through 1990, and Super Corporate Farms, as well as Executive Orders 11,647, 11,731, 10 regions, and public quote-unquote law. Free education of all children in government schools, abolition of children's factory labor in its present form, combination of education with industrial production. That was written by Karl Marx in the 1800s. People are being taxed to support what we call public schools, which train the young to work for the communal debt system. We also call it the Department of Education, the NEA, and outcome-based education. So those are the planks of communism as described by Karl Marx, and our version of the accomplishment of those planks. So it appears that all of the planks are in fact in place. So let's go over to the left-hand side of the column, and we are going to start going through the various, pardon me while I look at one of the servers. We're going to go through this. This is from 1963. This is the current communist goals back then. As I read them and we talk about them, let's think about exactly which ones that they have achieved here in the United States. We saw the planks on the right-hand side of the screen, and we know they've achieved all of those planks. So if Karl Marx were alive today and he saw the laws and such of the United States, he'd say, "You're a heck of a communist country, comrade." So let's take a look at the left-hand side of the screen here and take a look at some of the things from the Naked Communist. All you have to do to find this is type in 1963, 1963, Communist Manifesto, or Communist, the Naked Communist, and you will find many links to it. Current Communist goals. Now, some of these, such as number 1, the United States acceptance of coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war. We know that our current dear leader is, in fact, planning on devastating our nuclear deterrence force. More than likely after he has been reelected. You all saw, I am sure by now, the open mic where he was telling President Medvedev of the Soviet Union that, just tell Vladimir, just hold on until after the election. I'll have a free hand to do many more things after that. One has to wonder who the hell else he's been telling that to. The U.S. acceptance of coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war. So if we remove our ability to defend ourselves from an atomic attack from a country, say, as Iran or North Korea, well, we have to live in peaceful coexistence with that. Number 2, the U.S. willingness to capitulate in preference to engaging in atomic war. In other words, these first two right here, and I know what most of you are saying. You're saying to yourselves, Bill, atomic war is not a good thing. Remember the purpose of the atomic arsenal. I grew up in the time when we most assuredly needed it, because we were at any one time 45 minutes away from annihilation. If another country decides that the United States is weakened to the point that they cannot retaliate from a nuclear attack, that gives them the ability to have first strike capabilities. In other words, offensive weapons. Or, as Teddy Roosevelt said, speak softly and carry a big stick. These people want to eliminate our ability to protect ourselves. And once Iran and North Korea and everybody else around the world gets their hands on nuclear weapons and has a delivery platform of bringing them to the United States, you know damn well that somebody's going to use it, because those clowns are crazy. Let's go to number 3. Develop the illusion that total disarmament by the United States would be a demonstration of moral strength. This goes back to the old adage of, let's try to understand our enemies, that we must have done something to get them mad, instead of realizing that they are A, crazy as crap house rats, and B, evil. E-V-I-L, evil. Right from the depths of hell, evil. Friends of Satan, evil. Saddam Hussein, evil. Pol Pot, evil. Idi Amin Dada, evil. Stalin, evil. That type of evil. We don't need disarmament. We need to defeat them. Permit free trade between all nations regardless of communist affiliation and regardless of whether or not items could be used for war. Communist China, anybody? Just throwing it out there. Communist China. That would be number 4. Permit free trade between all nations regardless of communist affiliation and regardless of whether or not items could be used for war. So that is 4 of the current communist goals that are close to being or have been achieved. Let's continue on. We'll go through 10 of them tonight. and then we'll go through another 10 on the next show. And we'll see exactly how many of these current communist goals have been achieved. These are communist goals that the American Communist Party, also known as the Progressives or Liberals now, because they change their names whenever they get cornered and everybody figures out they're idiots and they want to drag the country down. They just change their name and what they call themselves. So at first they were communists, and then they became liberals, and now they're progressives, and now they're going back to liberals. So let's go to number 5. Extension of long-term loans to Russia and Soviet satellites. Well, the Soviets are no longer in existence, and we, when the communism fell, we did extend them long-term loans. Number 6, provide American aid to all nations, regardless of communist domination. Once again, that's been achieved. Number 7, here's a big one right here. I think we can all agree that this one has been achieved. Grant recognition of Red China, admission of Red China to the United Nations. Well, there you go. And let me see here. Number 8 was achieved right after World War II. Set up East and West Germany as separate states in spite of Khrushchev's promise in 1955 to settle the German question by free elections under the supervision of the UN. We all know there were East and West Germany up until the USSR fell. So that one has been achieved. Prolong the conferences to ban atomic tests because the United States has agreed to suspend tests as long as negotiations are in progress. Now, this is interesting because it not only had to do with the nuclear disarmament talks, the SALT I and SALT II treaties, but it is a hallmark, a trademark almost. These people could put a trademark, and anytime they're negotiating anything, they'd have a little R and a circle up next to that negotiation. That's how trademarked these people have this type of mentality and activity. This prolonged conferences. They've been doing this for decades. It goes back and forth, and it gets longer and longer and longer until finally everybody sits down and says, "Oh, we finally achieved this, and let's go ahead and sign this big treaty, and everything's going to be great, and the next week we'll find out how much we're screwed." And number 10, our last one for tonight, allow all Soviet satellites individual representation into the United Nations. Once again, I believe that with or without the fall of communism, that never really fell in the first place. It just went into hiding for a little while. All of the Soviet satellites are in the United Nations. So there you go. There's the first 10. And most people would agree that these first 10 have been achieved. On our next show, we're going to go through 11 through 20, including one that may actually be happening now that you might recognize. Number 19, use student riots to foment public protests. Sound like the Occupy movement to me. At any rate, that's about it for tonight. I appreciate everybody showing up. Those of you that may actually be watching the show, I don't know how many might actually be watching, but I don't really care because I enjoy talking to myself. So this will be up on YouTube shortly. And till tomorrow night, we'll see you guys later. Have a nice night. Thank you for showing up. The MP3 will be available for download shortly.